just to get started. And then I'll give the rules, a breakdown and everything so everybody knows what's going on. And welcome to the state of our schools. Hey, Mr. Dances, good to see you. As always.
Always good to see Mr. Dances.
I knew you couldn't miss this meeting, boy. I knew you couldn't miss it. See Diana on here. Good to see you, Diana.
Since we're shouting out some just friends, or I'm gonna just say a hey to Miss GS, Miss Judy Goldberg Strassler. Hey, Mr. McNeil, my high school principal, is on here. Hey, Mr.
Reggie's here?
Yes, he is.
Oh, nice. My God, I haven't seen Reginald in so long, man. Jeez, it's been a long time. Again, welcome to the state of our schools. Thank you for joining us. We're going to begin in about 3 minutes, just to give folks some opportunity to log on and to make sure that we're live on Facebook and on YouTube, and to be able to share that. Sam, just make sure that we tweet that link, and we obviously, I think it's just going to show up on Facebook, right?
Yeah, so I've got the link is up on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter right now. So I'll put the link in the chat too.
Got it. So folks can share it too. Perfect. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the state of our schools. We'll get started again in about 2 minutes. Just giving everybody an opportunity to log on and connect. You all will be muted the entire time until we get to the portion where we're able to ask questions. Okay, it is now 5:35. Looks like we still have folks hopping in, but we're going to get started either way. First, I want to thank you all for being on the call, and I want to thank, obviously, my panelists that are here today for agreeing to this event. You are now on watching us on Zoom, YouTube Live, or Facebook for our first meeting about the state of our schools and what we're doing with our schools in the state of Maryland. Let me just talk about instructions for participants today and what you should have in as we go along with this process of having this virtual discussion on education. So number one, here's some rules. Number one, after brief remarks by each panelist, we will open it up to take questions. So Dr. Goldson and Mr. School Board Member Thomas will have a couple will say a few words to you all and provide some updates. Then we'll open it up for questions for everyone. And so you can place your questions in the chat, or you can also place your questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand as well. And we'll call on you, and then you could have a minute, 60 seconds to say your comments and to ask questions of Dr. Goldson and the other panelists. And then once Dr. Goldson and School Board Member Thomas speaks, and we go through a few rounds of questions. Then we're going to have Ms. Shamoyia Gardiner from the Charlotte Schools of Maryland to present on the perspective of the state level. So you'll also be able to ask her questions, and Dr. Goldson and Mr. Thomas also have agreed to stay on till the end to answer all your questions at the end as well. So we're going to try to get to as many questions as we possibly can during this session. But you will have an opportunity to speak directly with our panelists and myself to be able to answer any questions that you may have. Again, I gotta say that this meeting is being broadcast live and on YouTube and on Facebook. And again, if you have any questions, comment below or comment, and we'll take a look at them and be able to share those, and you'll be able to ask your questions. So with that said, I want to thank again my panelists for being here today. Again, my good friend Shamoyia Gardiner is with us, who is an education expert at Charlotte Schools, Maryland. She has been a strong advocate on improving educational outcomes for students and has worked with me directly on many pieces of legislation. As you all have seen, last week, PGCPS, Dr. Goldson, our CEO, released her plan for schools this fall, which will be completely virtual. This is uncharted territory for everyone involved, including students, parents, teachers, and administrators. And I know we have a few on the line today. After hearing from many concerned community members, I decided to put this event together to answer some pressing questions and address the issues most important to families. These are extremely uncertain times, and our community deserves answers and a great outlook forward. It is important that we rethink what our education system looks like, and this COVID-19 has served as that opportunity to ensure that we provide a more fair and equitable education for all students, regardless of their zip code. The 2020 legislative session was also unprecedented, as it was cut short by almost 3 weeks due to COVID-19. While this was the first time in over 150 years the Maryland General Assembly did not complete a 90-day session, we were able to pass some crucial legislation in the 2 months we did have. As the newly appointed Vice Chair of Ways and Means, I'm the first Prince Georgian to serve as the Education Subcommittee Chairman. So I have a complete leadership role in education in the state of Maryland, which is also a reason I wanted to have this meeting as well, to talk about education policy in total for the state. As a floor leader and co-sponsor of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, also known as the Kerwin Commission, I helped ensure that Prince George's County received a more equitable funding formula built into the bill to lower the burden on taxpayers while still providing meaningful funding. This bill will provide billions of new funding to our schools to finally secure a world-class education for every student, again, regardless of their zip code. We want an equitable education for everyone. Another bill that we looked at was House Bill 1, the Built to Learn Act, which is another bill I was proud to support. This bill would have invested an additional $2.2 billion in new spending for school construction dollars across the state of Maryland, which is much needed in the state, and it's specifically in Prince George's County, as we have over $8 billion backlog, and I'm sure Dr. Goldson can speak to that. We also passed a bill to fund our HBCUs that were underfunded for decades. And with that bill and the speaker's bill that we passed, it would have added an additional $577 million to our HBCUs, all 4 institutions in the state of Maryland, over a 10-year period. That would have brought more equity in education. All 3 of these bills were vetoed by Governor Hogan. And as you know, we wanted to create a more equitable system, this was the speakers and my education priorities for this last legislative session, and we got those things done. So with that said, I want to thank again my panelists for being here. So I'm going to ask our CEO, Dr. Goldson, to start our conversation and give our opening remarks, and then followed by Mr. School Board Member Josh Thomas. Thank you.
Thank you, W. Washington, for having me on this this virtual experience. We scheduled this before I made the announcement, so you must have been able to look through a crystal ball and knew that this date would be perfect. So thank you for the opportunity. And thank you for the Prince George's County Public School professional family who is joining us virtually, and a variety of school board members that represent multiple districts throughout Prince George's County Public Schools. So thank you. As stated earlier, on July 15th, which seems like it was forever, we announced that for the first semester from August 31st until January 29th, we would be doing distance learning. During the initial conversation or release of that information, I didn't go into how we arrived at that decision, but I will take a little bit of time today to do that, but did share a little bit of it on the telephone town hall that we held that same night. Before school concluded, the executive leadership team began doing site visits to see how we could implement a full hybrid model for the reopening of school. I went to bus lots, got on the bus, counted out what it would look like if we were to place our students on the bus, followed the CDC guidelines, made some modifications to what CDC recommended. We kind of arrived at the point that we could probably put 22 students on a bus, one child per seat with mask on their face, if we were to follow the hybrid model. We went to an elementary, middle, and high school that week, spent time going to classrooms, cafeteria, gym, just so that we could experience what it would be like in a school and to know what we would need to do in order to prepare for that hybrid experience. At the same time, we then started the creation of an internal and external recovery team that is made up of now about 100 people, both internal, about 80, and then 20 external. The 80 internal folks represented every labor partner we had, multiple positions. And literally, I just gave them guidelines of, provide some recommendations and direction around what we would need to do to implement a hybrid learning model. The team started working on, that 80-member team started working on those plans, and that team was divided into 3 groups: instruction, student activity, support services, and facilities. Had the opportunity to drop into the instructional team. They met often, and I went in on that team, but did not provide lots of direction, allowed them to be innovative in their thinking and to create a plan, and for them to know that their voice was valued. And they were selected because we thought, honest and truly, they had some amazing recommendation ideas that we could implement, and you will see the fruits of that labor in the plan that we're hoping to pull off to post on Friday. They took their recommendations, presented it to an external team of about 20 members that represented people who are CEOs or COOs of large organizations, medical practitioners, someone from Children's Hospital, parents, who then looked at that plan, made some input and recommendations. And then based on all of that information, I then made individual calls to Board of Education members to discuss the direction that I thought was best for Prince George's County Public Schools. The team initially sent to me a recommendation that would start with distance learning for quarter 1, and we would move into hybrid for quarters 2, 3, and 4. During the last week of June, while I spent time off trying to recoup from the March COVID experience, I did spend some time talking to some practitioners in the health field, representatives from the American Pediatric Association, and also some staff at many of our higher education institutions. And what we found is that second quarter will fall at a time where Thanksgiving and winter break also exist, and during those times created additional exposure for the virus due to parents, students, and staff traveling for Thanksgiving and winter break. Taking all of that into consideration, and knowing that in our higher education institutions, they were not allowing students to return to school after Thanksgiving break due to that increased possibility for exposure, which is why I made a recommendation to board members that we consider first semester. And that's how we arrived at the decision. We will have a robust distance learning plan beginning the first day of school, August 31st. It will be a virtual learning experience. There will be small group pullout for special education, our English language learners, that will allow us to also meet the needs of our identified needs that are slated in students' IEPs. On Wednesdays of each week, there will be small group instruction opportunities. So if students had difficulty understanding the content in their virtual experience on Monday and Tuesday, there'll be opportunity to get individual support and small group support on Wednesday, and then continue to return to that whole group experience on Thursday, Friday of that week. So we're not waiting till the end of the week to provide support. We're doing it in the middle. It is as if they're in school, but on a full day virtually. There will be whole group independent practice in our guide that is 161 pages that I'm trying to get down to a few less pages. It has multiple recommended samples of what we could do at the elementary, middle, and high school level in terms of scheduling. Our students at the secondary level, when they submitted their course requests, submitted requests for either 5, 6, 7, or 8 period day. They'll have all those courses on their schedule. They'll follow the A-day, B-day schedule just as if they were in school. And so in order to ensure that safety was one of those guiding principles, equity and excellence, this is the plan that we felt would ensure that our students are safe. We will be one-to-one on the very first day of school, which means that we have utilized our CARES Act funds to close the gap in terms of the digital divide. I'm grateful that we were able to distribute 60,000 laptops prior to school closing at the end of this school year, and we purchased 5,000 hotspots, which allow those families who didn't have Wi-Fi access to have those access, and we paid Comcast Essentials with the support of our school board of designating $2 million to pay for to pay for Wi-Fi access for those families who are on free and reduced meals. We will have food distribution starting the first day of school at all 206 sites. So you can just go to the nearest school to get a meal. We will do meal distribution on Monday and Thursday. On Monday, you will get breakfast and lunch for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday will be Thursday, Friday. We are also strategically placing parent support centers throughout the district. What we learned from the spring is that there were parents who needed some assistance on how to utilize the technology tools and how to in some cases upload, attach a document to send to a teacher so that they could score graded, or how to navigate, even how to get on Zoom or Google Meet. So we do want to provide support centers strategically located throughout our district so that parents have that support, or just to say help, a hotline that we're establishing so that they can call and say, help, I'm at my end of the rope in terms of how I can support my child. What are the resources are available in the areas that they might need some content support in? Our teachers will receive professional training from August 20th through August 28th, which is about a week and a half of professional learning that will help them to take the next level up in terms of their distance learning content knowledge. All of our staff were trained in April in 4 days on how to get on our platform. And I'm grateful that we were able to execute that. And we're going to need their innovativeness and creativity to help to deliver lessons for the first day that are engaging as if our students were in front of us. In terms of special education or students who are English language learners, we will follow IEPs or their 504 plan. We will revise as necessary to support our distance learning module. And as stated earlier, there will be small group pullout virtually. Zoom has the capability of allowing small group pullout, as well as the ability to also do small group on the separate platforms. Our paraprofessionals will be instrumental. Our paraeducators will be instrumental in helping to do that. In the spring, they did not have laptops, but we have made purchases so that they will have them for the fall. So that is the whole plan in a nutshell. As I shared, the 150-page document, 61, I'm trying to get down, will be available for full review. Our goal is to have it up by Friday. I'm in the process of making revisions. We'll continue tonight making revisions, and it needs to be translated in Spanish so that we can post it for our families and get it to our 80-member committee, 100-member committee, and our Board of Education members to review as well. So that is a summary in a nutshell.
Thank you, Dr. Goldson. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
A great summary. We're going to ask School Board Member Thomas to say a couple words, and then we're going to take a few questions.
Thanks, Delegate Washington, and good evening, everyone. I want to just start by especially thanking you and your team, Delegate Washington, for putting this virtual forum together. I think this is a really important opportunity for us to discuss some of these very important issues with community members. I also just want to recognize and appreciate my co-panelists. So Dr. Goldson, I'm so glad that you're here, as a lot of the questions that are going to be asked to me are questions that I'm going to actually be passing over to you. I got you. I'm so grateful that you're here for that. And I also want to just acknowledge Shamoyia, our other co-panelist here. And also, before I continue, just want to also mention there's a couple of my colleagues on the board that are here on this call. So Board Member Boozer Strother, who represents District 3 with me, Board Member Queen, who represents District 6 we all work together on the board, and our newly sworn in student member of the board also is here on our call. So just want to acknowledge all of these important folks who I get to work with. And I see a lot of other familiar faces, community members, folks that I've gotten to interact with over the past 3 years. I know my face might not look as familiar. This is the most hair I've ever had on my head, and this is my beard has ever been. But I ask that you receive my quarantine pandemic version of myself. So I want to just mention a couple of things, really, and just to kind of, if I could briefly summarize just some of the highlights of the past year and the work that we've done as a Board of Education. Most recently, we did almost unanimously approve our 2020-2021 budget. And I actually have the privilege of sitting on the Policy and Governance Committee along with my colleague, Ms. Boozer Strother, here on the call. And we really got to pull out some really incredible opportunities for our students and our system, primarily with adjusting our attendance policy, essentially creating more opportunities for students who want to be able to advocate in Annapolis. We know that there were a lot of high school level students that wanted to be able to do this, but were essentially being penalized because of missing school days. We thought that students deserve to have their voices heard and shouldn't have to miss out on instructional time for that. We adjusted the attendance policy in many different ways. That's just one of the examples. Also with implementing our workplace bullying policy. One of the accomplishments that I'm extremely proud of our board for doing is passing financial literacy as a required course for all high schools throughout our county. That is going to be only coming into effect in the next several years as we have to now develop this curriculum. But I'm extremely excited, as we are the first of our kind across this region, to be able to push forward something like this. And I think it's incredibly important for our students to be graduating from high school with a strong sense of financial literacy. Some of the major issues that were coming to my table and probably most of my colleagues' tables throughout the year mostly had to do with school bus challenges as well as overcrowding in our schools and in our classrooms. And it's as huge as these priorities are, it's very interesting that we are now in a time where school buses are now something that we won't even be thinking about until 2021. Not that we won't be thinking about, but we won't be getting on them. We also won't. We also will be thinking about addressing our overcrowding issue more directly in 2021. So obviously, COVID-19 has really forced us to change what our list of priorities are and where we're focusing our attention. But I'm extremely grateful that we have an administration who's been very transparent and working to communicate with us. And so I'm looking forward to continuing to work with Dr. Goldson and her team to ensure that as we reopen virtually this fall, we really get it right. And we really do provide our kids with the best education possible amidst a pandemic. So thanks very much.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. So we're just going to take a few questions, and I want to thank you both, and also want to recognize our school board members as well, or any other elected official. If you're on the call and you're calling, text me so I can acknowledge you. I don't want to miss anyone. I know how that feels, and I wouldn't want to be you in that situation. So let's just take a quick question. Dr. Goldson, I guess this one is for you and maybe for the school board member as well. Let's talk about how we got to the situation of deciding that this fall you're going to do an all virtual school year until January. Just one of the questions that came up, it said, one of the questions was, is the survey an accurate representation of our county's desires? Where the PGCPS website said the survey represented about 18,000 parents, students, and teachers. In contrast, they acknowledged that Anne Arundel County had about 49%, the survey was completed about 45,000 families, and that 45,000 represented about 79,000, which is a higher percentage than our school system, obviously. But so just wondered if you can acknowledge that and speak to that for us.
Yeah. So we sent a survey out in June while we still have families engaged. We sent it not only to parents, but we sent it to students, teachers, and community members. And we used social media, Twitter. We did a robocall. We did everything we could to make sure that parents had an opportunity to provide input. In addition to that, so let me go back. Statistically, when you look at the percentage of families that typically respond to surveys, that is a decent percentage. Could it have been higher? Would have loved it to have been. And every time I got an email, I always responded back with thanks for sharing your input and concerns about the reopening. Did you also complete the survey? So we tried to provide as many opportunities, but in addition to the survey, I also recorded in a separate document how many emails I received with details about what people wanted for the reopening. And I can tell you our school board members, whenever they received it, if I was not copied, they forwarded it to me so that I could also record that. So not only did we have survey results, but we also had emails that were sent to me. Now, let me be very clear. On average, I get between 500 to 700 emails a day. Exactly. So you can imagine it fluctuates. I got a lot more, honestly, when the president announced what we should do. My mailbox was flooded. And then as school districts started to make their calls, my emails were flooded. So I did utilize all those in making that decision. So thanks for that question.
Thank you for answering that question. I saw there was one raised hand on here. Sam, can you let them ask the question?
Hello, thank you all for letting me ask my question. Thank you for having this. So my question was about, I know, of course, it all hit everybody at one time and nobody was prepared for this, but there was a lack of laptops available for students last time. And I just want to know, is that going to be an issue again? Because I wasn't able to properly have my daughter properly complete last school year because of technological issues.
So we did 3 distributions for laptops. We did one week, and then we had some parents who weren't able to make it that week. So we did it again that next week. And then we did another distribution the last week of June. for those families who wanted to participate in our summer learning program, our free virtual summer learning program, which right now we have 40,000 students who are participating in the summer program. We have made a purchase of 50,000 additional laptops, and we will do another distribution prior to the opening of school. So please reach out to your individual school to make sure that they have you on the list to receive a laptop. The great thing with technology is that we're able to monitor who signs on. So in the distribution of those Chromebooks, no one else can use them because you have to be able to, you log on with your PGCPS email. So that is how we're able to track who has them and who does not. But yes, we have enough for everyone.
Thank
And
you.
for our kindergarten and first grade students, they have iPads because we know it is difficult to navigate a QWERTY keyboard at such a young age.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Goldson. I do just want everybody, if you are raising your hand, be patient with us. And also, if you can just tell us who you are, what school your child goes to. And I know, Mr. Anthony, you weren't able to do that, but thank you for your question. It was a great one. And Dr. Goldson, can folks, I guess a follow-up to that, can parents sign up online on the school's website to get the website, or do they have to call in order to get that?
No, actually, we already know, but for parents' own reassurance, you can send an email to your school's principal. But we do know already who we've assigned because there's a form that you have to complete. You have to sign off that you have our device. We don't just pass them out with no documentation that you received it. We do know who has it.
Okay, we'll take the next question, Sam.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi there.
Yep.
Hi. My son currently goes to private school, and I'm thinking about re-enrolling him back into the public school system, considering that we're going to be online. My biggest question is, how will you handle standardized testing online for the students? Because I'm really considering bringing him back. One, because he needs a little bit more interaction. He just needs more. The education part is good. He just needs more. So I'm really considering about bringing him back to the county school system. But I just want to know, how is standardized testing done, because they don't do standardized testing in the private schools.
Yep. So for the opening of school, we've created documents called bridge documents, and it's to bridge the content that students did not experience fourth quarter and what they'll need for first quarter. And it'll be done for the first 3 weeks. But prior to doing that content, all students will have a diagnostic assessment that will be done at the beginning of the school year electronically that will allow our teachers to assess where students are at the beginning of the year, and for us to assess on a quarterly basis how they've moved in terms of content throughout the school year. We are still waiting for direction from Maryland State Department of Education concerning standardized assessments. And that would be the Maryland Comprehensive Assessment Program, our kindergarten readiness assessment, which typically are done electronically and in person for secure sites. I can tell you, we just had a conversation today, and this is outside of just the systemic standardized assessments, that PSAT, SAT is saying that schools can do them in their locations. We will not have the ability to do that because safety is a priority for us. But we are waiting for guidance. Now, I will say that the state board meets again July 28th, and then they meet again in September. Now, what it looks like is that not all, but majority of the school districts in the state of Maryland are moving to distance learning. So I think once the Maryland State Department of Education knows the status of all school districts, they'll be able to render a decision. This past year, they waived them, but school districts can do local assessments. I know that was a whole lot of information, but I just wanted you to have it all.
It was great. It was great. And welcome back to PGCPS. We're happy to have you.
Yes, welcome home.
Yep, welcome home. Dr. Goldson, if you can just for everybody, I know Dr. Goldson mentioned the state board, and sometimes we only realize we have a local board, but we have a state board as well, and they shall be held to account for the issues that happen in our school system and ensuring that there's funding that it's funneled down to the schools that are in most need, like our schools in Prince George's County. So I urge you to take part in the dates that Dr. Goldson spoke of, and make sure that they know how you feel about certain issues, and because they do handle the standardized tests and many other issues that happen across our state. So Dr. Goldson, can you just answer this quick question for me about how we are, is this right now, is the school system considering this as an opportunity and a moment to rethink how we or reassess how we do our online learning, or move into more online learning classes and studying it and studying the effects of it and how it affects teaching and how it affects students and the administration and saving dollars? Can you just speak to that a little
Oh,
bit?
you can best believe it. We have these conversations almost daily, and the researcher in us and myself is honest and truly, I think we all need to embrace that the way we experience public education at the fall of last school year, we probably will never see that again. We are entering in a new phase of learning. The fact that I have 40,000 6th through 12th grade students who are doing a free virtual summer learning program, their arms were not twisted. It's optional to experience it. For me, the old fogey reminds me that, you know, our children might be sending us a message, that some of them, not all, want to learn differently. And so I think we as educators are going to have to really take a true assessment of where we are and how we can do individualized instruction to meet the needs of our students and what they bring to the table. And there are some students who thrived in this arena who said, I was an introvert, I was able to focus. I think I did more learning than I did before in virtual, and I appreciated the flexible scheduling. Then I had others who said, I appreciated the in-person experience and I miss it. And I think honestly, the best opportunity we can provide is the best of both worlds for students to be able to choose. They do that at the university level. And we honest and truly are going to have to look at providing that for our students before they get to college, and probably will help with the transition when they get to college. And it's not a complete culture shock for them when they get there. And then I just want to applaud our Board of Education because we'd already started having a conversation around changing our evening school structure from a traditional model to online. And it was one that I honestly thought we were going to have to slow walk. And because of COVID-19, it was like ripping the Band-Aid off. And we are going to a full virtual evening school program next school year that's offered from all of our high schools instead of just the 2 locations we were providing. So we had initially started those conversations pre-COVID-19 and wanting to meet the needs of our families. And then COVID happened, and I have been taught never let a good crisis go to waste. And we are going to benefit from doing something different in the fall for evening school.
Thank you, Dr. Goldson. All right, so next we'll go to our next question. I think Suzanne Johnson. Sam?
Yes, this is Suzanne Johnson. My daughter is a rising 4th grader. She was at a Spanish immersion school and for the first through 3rd grade, and then now she's going to the New Legends Charter School. Immersion was very difficult in a virtual environment, and I'm hoping with much more live instruction that'll be a much more positive platform going forward. But my question is, there's a lot of focus on making sure we have the technology for our students, the devices and the hotspots, but that does not, what we learned in the spring, at least what I learned from my daughter, is she had the technology, but not a teacher on the other end to teach her. And she needed the teacher. So I think equity instruction is just as important as getting the devices and the internet to all of our students. So having standardized instruction materials that, a lot of our teachers this will be new for them, and they'll have a lot to turn around, a lot more new instruction materials every day with new lesson plans. So I'm hoping they're getting a lot of support and standardized materials provided to them, so they don't all thousands of teachers aren't, or hundreds of teachers aren't having developed materials on a daily basis. But also, as you mentioned about harnessing this this pandemic and this challenging situation we're in, we have the opportunity now with everyone going one-to-one technology to really harness that technology and diversify our instruction and really move from books and worksheets to more interactive methods.
Ma'am, can you get to the point of your question so we can have Dr. Goldson answer it for us, please?
Yes, the point was about diversifying, about standardizing and harnessing the instructional materials to really ensure equity in our distance learning model, and not just that it's not just having the technology, but really using that technology efficiently and with equity in mind and excellence.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for that question. We are already planning for that before we even concluded the school year. As stated before, we'll start the first week with standardized lessons for all grades and courses for the first 3 weeks, and then continue to provide curriculum documents that have been revised for the virtual learning experience so that students can implement that content across the district, but also have an opportunity to add their own flair to it, because our teachers are extremely innovative and rose to the challenge even during the spring in many cases to help deliver what's written on paper into an experience that our students would appreciate and enjoy. So thanks for that.
Absolutely. We're going to go to the next question. And I also wanted to recognize school board member Edward Barrows, who's on the phone with us. I'm our longest tenured school board member of all time. Wanted to recognize him for being on the call with us. So we're going to go to the next one, Mr. Arnold Jimenez. Sam?
Hello. So I'm a middle school teacher. I'm over at Buck Lodge Middle School. I'm the Esau newcomers teacher, where I've been for 5 years under Mr. Nance. And as you know, we had a lot of difficulties just with distance learning with our newcomer students who were just coming to the United States in regards to technology and parents understanding technology, and not even just that, the trauma part and the reunification with parents. So I just really want to know what we're going to be able to do to assist with that in September, as well as newcomer teachers. Buck Lodge is one of those populations that has a big newcomer population. So I'm a content teacher as well as the newcomers teacher. So we don't have the luxury of having someone in our classroom to assist with small groups. It's all on me. And generally our class sizes are about 40 per class. I teach 4 classes, and we were about 140 students each for the last 2 years. So just really, how are we going to be able to combat that and really assist our students with learning English, dealing with the trauma, and being really, really supportive all around for our immigrant families? And thank you for allowing me to speak.
Yep. So let me first say, even if we were in person, you shouldn't have 40 students in the class. So I'm already going to look that school up and resolve that issue. In terms of trauma-informed care, thank you for reminding me about that. All of our staff will be trained. I've already looked at the schedule today. So our staff will be trained on trauma-informed care during the August 20 through 28th week of virtual learning experience. At the elementary level, we have allocated 30-minute lesson daily around trauma-informed care. And at the secondary level, we're giving you strategies and lessons to immerse throughout your content areas. So making sure that we support the whole child is extremely important. And we continue to remind our staff that we also have an employee assistance program for our own staff, because we acknowledge even our educators have experienced throughout this pandemic their own personal experiences, and we still want you to be the whole educator. So that's important that you also take care of yourself as well. In terms of the support for our English language learners, what we failed to do in the spring was utilize a variety of positions, central office and school-based, to help with our English language learners. And so in the guide, you'll see that we have addressed that now. We've identified very specific roles that those non-classroom based, but their school-based staff can assist with. And then you won't feel as if you're doing it by yourself. You will have someone else. If you want to do that small group instruction, you can say, hey, plan accordingly to do that, so that you can have an experience where someone else is assisting you in that class of less than 40 that you're going to have, and to be able to do small group instruction. So thank you for that, Arnaldo, and I will make sure you don't have 40.
Thank you, Dr. Goldson. We're going to go to Ms. Shamoyia Gardiner next. She has a presentation. And again, I got to say this to everyone that, it's obviously Prince George's County school system controls our local schools, but also Maryland and the state matters. And so Ms. Gardiner is going to talk to you about a little bit what's happening at the state level. So we're going to share her presentation in a second. But she comes with a wealth of experience with the Maryland Strong Schools and has done education initiatives throughout the state and has worked on children, family, and youth issues for a very long time. And she's one of my good friends in Annapolis. And she also does education policy with the NAACP because she's the chair of the education subcommittee at the NAACP in Baltimore. So Ms. Gardiner and Sam, do we have the presentation up ready to go? Ms. Gardiner, are you ready? And then we're going to go right back to questions right after this. So please be patient, everyone. We're going to try to get to as many of the questions that you have as possible. So here we go. Ms. Gardiner, all you.
All right, awesome. Can everyone hear me clearly? Or rather, if you can't, can you make some noise? Okay, cool. That looks good. So when we want to talk about what's going on with education with our local school system, it's very easy to just focus on those areas, but it's also very important for us to contextualize what's going on locally in a broader section. So we're going to look at a state level view of reopening schools. And the first place we want to look is to the Maryland State Department of Education, because that's the state agency responsible for all of this. And what we find, unfortunately, is that MSDE has provided local school systems with a list of considerations, but not an actual meaningful plan or guidance about what to do as far as reopening schools. We combine this with systemic and existing underfunding of public school systems, particularly ones serving Black and Brown children, like Prince George's County Public School. And we see that re-entrenches existing disparities that we're working very hard to get rid of, and ultimately ends up needlessly harming our students. Beyond that, we see disjointed strategies emerge across the state. So we've got a really great example of a school system, and Dr. Goldson right here talking about what the plan looks like for the upcoming year. It's not the same throughout the state. It's not even the same up and down the I-95 corridor. And for highly transient students, this poses a massive problem. So what we're hoping to see in the future, and what you can expect us at Strong Schools and other education advocates around the state to continue pushing for, is for MSDE to begin stepping up more and taking more of a role in centralizing information. So we know what's going on. We know things like how many school systems have seen large numbers of students just not show up for virtual class, and what's the implication of that? Because ultimately, a coordinated framework from the state level is going to be critical for our local school systems to be successful, despite the amazing work that we're seeing happening at the local level. Can we go to the next slide? Cool. So we also have to talk about the need for investment, period. I mentioned earlier that a lot of school systems in the state are underfunded and have been for a while. Nationally, we expect that public schools will require anywhere from $158 to $245 billion to reopen safely for all of our students and teachers and school community members. That sounds like a large figure, but when we put that into context and recognize there are 55 million students in the state out of school, we're talking about between $3,000 and $5,000 per student to make sure that we can return safely. So first, that is the life of a child or a teacher or any school community member, and it's absolutely worth that. But second, we should note that the federal support we've seen thus far has amounted to less than $15 billion for public education, which is nowhere near addressing the gap. Beyond that, there are going to be additional costs for our local school systems and individual schools as far as complying, buying PPE, making sure that the buildings and our school buses are clean, for the districts that are moving towards hybrid models, and et cetera. So when we take all of that into account and bring it back to Maryland, our governor decided to veto the blueprint for Maryland's future, which is not, of course, the silver bullet to solve all of our issues in education, but goes a very, very long way to addressing the historic systemic funding inequity in the state and providing new policy solutions to meet the challenges of the 21st century. So overriding that veto is not just a goal for us, it's a given. We're going to have to get that done, but it's also the start of a new chapter in this fight for educational equity, because things do look very different now. And let's go to the next slide. Thanks. And I understand that it's very easy to say, what about funding? We are in the middle of an economic crisis. Joblessness is at an all-time high. How can we possibly be talking about funding education and spending billions on children to make sure that they can learn? So our partners at the Maryland Center for Economic Policy recently released this publication called Lessons from the Great Recession, which goes back to 2008, the last time the nation was in a massive fiscal crisis like this, and notes that the budget cuts we took at that time, those big slashing cuts to make things work, actually ended up hurting our recovery from the Great Recession, because our policymakers slashed critical services like education that are necessary to make sure that our society is functioning strong and capable of contributing into itself. And Prince George's County probably knows this better than anywhere else in the state of Maryland. The 2002 Bridge to Excellence, which we sometimes call Thornton, was not a failure on its face. In 2004, between 2004 and 2008, when the recession started, most of the school districts in the state were fully funded, and we saw the academic results from our students. As soon as those cuts were made by our Board of Public Works, we started to see students lose out. So regardless of what happens at the federal level, regardless of whether we get those couple $100 billion I talked about earlier, Maryland has to take some steps to improve its tax code and ensure that we're pursuing equitable economic policies before we even start talking about cutting funding for our schools. And the next slide. Thanks. So the last thing I'll talk about is the blueprint itself. The blueprint for Maryland's future remains just as necessary today in light of COVID, in light of renewed interest in police brutality, in light of renewed interest in health disparities across the country, as it was the day it was passed. Community schools are critical. We have seen that in this particular crisis, community school coordinators were best poised to respond to the needs of students and families. We know that we need more community-based mental health supports to address the trauma that our students are dealing with. And we need the expansion of things like Judy centers and family support centers and the other provisions that the blueprint provided. It is called a blueprint for a reason, because we just need to start there. We know that there are a lot of other issues in education that we need to be working to address, like bridging the digital divide and addressing student trauma, making sure that school discipline policies aren't as punitive as they are right now and don't continue to disproportionately hurt Black students, and making sure that we're addressing childcare and early education. Unfortunately, we are not in a place anymore where we can afford to pick and choose issues. If we are addressing education and concerned about the needs of our students, then we have to be willing and able to advocate for all of these issues and talk about them at the same time. And that's it for me. Any questions?
That was a fantastic presentation. Thank you for that. I keep on getting notes from people saying, man, that's some good information. So thank you for that, Shamoyia, Miss Gardiner. Thank you for that. That was great info. So let's go back to Shamoyia. Here's a question for you real quick. Can you just tell people what they can do to ensure that the veto overrides happen, and ensure that this might be hurting me a little bit, but ensure the veto overrides happen, and ensure that how they get engaged in a state policy and state politics that matters, because this was about $4 billion at year 2029 or 28 that would have come to our schools throughout the state of Maryland. And now, because the governor has vetoed that, we will not see any new funding come to our local schools. So can you just speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Delegate. Thanks for the lead in. So it is important that whoever you are, you find out who represents you in Annapolis, that being your delegate, you probably have 3 delegates, so reach out to all of them, as well as your state senator. You can also reach out directly to the Speaker of the House, Speaker Adrian Jones, or the President of the Senate, Bill Ferguson, and let them know that you expect they will override the governor's veto of the blueprint on day 1, as soon as they get back into session. Be it a regular or special session, whenever it happens, the blueprint is number 1 on the agenda. And if you'd like to stay updated on a continual basis with where we are in the override fight, what other education issues are really important, please go to strongschoolsmaryland.org, sign up, join our news list. join our teams of 10. We have team leaders doing really great work across the state, very, very locally. It's really easy to manage. So if you've just got like a couple friends and you want to talk about education, Strong Schools is well equipped to help support you in your grassroots advocacy.
Thanks for that, Shamoyia. Really appreciate that. I just want to let everybody know, just housekeeping. If you are on YouTube or on Facebook, you can still watch it there. It seems like we're getting a lot of folks coming into the Zoom account. So please go where you can watch it, and we're recording it, so we'll upload it a little later so everybody can see this. Sam, let's go to the next question. Got someone? Yeah.
Hello.
Okay, Ms. Johnson, we got you next. Thank you. Tell us
Hi, good evening. Okay, good evening. How are you? I just have a twofold question. I'm representing the Mighty Clippers over at Oxon Hill High School as the PTA president. And as a mom of 2 student athletes, I have a question regarding our sports. I see that the surrounding counties are allowing small group workouts. Just wondering where we are with that, because I know academics are first, but also athletes need that break for mental clarity and just to kind of keep up with their sport as an outlet. So just wondering where we stand as far as allowing, of course, social distancing, small group workouts for student athletes. And my second question is, during this time, we're all suffering. So I know that teachers are suffering as well, especially if they have small children. Do we have any plans to provide any type of mental health or like mental support for our teachers to stay motivated?
So your second question kind of broke up, but I think I got the gist of it. So the first one, in terms of sports, state superintendents just had a call on Friday, and we discussed this. We will not be able to offer sports for the fall for those districts that are doing distance learning. We just do not have safety protocols in place that will ensure that those athletes remain safe during that opportunity. And so we strongly encourage students to still exercise, as our county exec has shared, to go out, get exercise, but we will not be able to facilitate organized conditioning because of the liability around it and our ability to keep everyone safe. The second question around mental health supports for our staff, we had several mental health wellness sessions throughout the spring, and we'll continue to offer them in the fall. In addition, we do have 80 schools that will have a mental health provider assigned to them to provide supports to students and families in both small group, individualized, and family support. And it can be done virtually. So thank you for that question.
Okay, we'll take the next question coming up. I think we have Ms. Atkins.
Yes, Ms. Akins. Thanks for taking my question. Thanks for taking my question. I have a rising 5th grader at Brandywine. So my question is regarding IEP assessments. Just trying to see how that's being handled. Me personally, I've had a meeting since February that has been pending and canceled in March. And now that we're going in the new school year virtually, I'm a little anxious of how the next steps to get my son help with accommodations. Like, we're just in limbo.
Yep, got it. So I saw your question in the chat. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to send me an email at ceo@pgcps.org.
Okay.
So that I can make sure that that meeting gets scheduled, and to ask some additional questions, but don't want to get into your personal business on a Zoom meeting that's also being published. That's also being published. So
okay, thank you.
Give me an email, but that way I can get you connected and moving through the process, because I have some questions around testing. Like, did they already take it or are they still waiting? And I want that to be on this call. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Goldson, you're good at this.
Thanks, Ms. Akins.
All right. We're going to ask Miss Meredith Muth. So ask the next question.
Great, thank you. First, I just want to start by saying I have heard nothing but praise for how the county is handling this unique situation. Dr. Goldson and your team, thank you so much. My question is, and you may have seen it already in comments since you're multitasking very well, but it is around synchronous learning and flexibility. So if I understood from the town hall, I haven't read the full report, they're expected to be online and be engaged and active for the full school day. In the case of elementary school, that's 6 hours of online for students. What if you're a family and you have 3 children? What if someone is working out of the house? To what extent, what are some strategies the district and the schools are thinking about to provide a little bit more flexibility for those families and parents that need it within the synchronous schedule? Thank you.
Thank you. And I think you sent me an email on this, I think. I don't know, but okay. Don't worry. Lots of other people have. So in the guide, what we are doing, and we'll share with our teachers, is really taping those lessons so that you can access those lessons throughout different periods of the day. And it's also important for me to say, even though, and you'll see it in the guide under the samples, even though I say there's distance learning all day, we have built in breaks after every content. At the elementary level, 1, it helps with the transition for thinking and for the teacher to get organized. And 2, kids do need a break. Heck, I have been on this computer all day and I need one. So I can only imagine. So there are breaks in between, and there is a lunch. So they have the break for lunch, and we're trying to figure out a way to do at least twice a week Zoom lunches so that the kids can interact with each other virtually, so they don't necessarily have to have lunch by themselves if they're the only ones home with their parent and are tired of having lunch with their parent. So we are addressing it. This is the one piece around it that we're working through, and that is when we have families that only rely on taped lessons, it's difficult for us to monitor students' health and well-being and making sure that they're not being abused. And so our educators have we're giving them a checklist of things to look for. And so it's just, there may be times that we're saying, hey, can we just see your child's face? So we know that they're okay, but we do acknowledge that your schedules have to fluctuate and you work. And so you might not be able to stay on, the kid might not be able to stay on the whole time, but we're going to ask teachers to record their lessons and post them. So that will help with that piece. And then the second one, and this is kind of to your piece, because I saw somebody say that their child is in the summer program and then they caught them on YouTube. When your child is in internet fatigue, stop. Have them get offline. You are the adult. You know your child better than anyone. And if they need a break, they got to take it. You have to say they got to take it. So it's okay, which is why the tape lessons are so important, because then it allows you to come back later when you have their attention. So we are working through that. So they'll be live and taped. Now we got to just figure out how to get them uploaded, and everyone trained how to upload so that we don't crash the system. Okay, but we're working through it.
Great, thank you, Dr. Goldson, for that. And feel free, School Board Member Thompson, to jump in here when you need to, man. We got your back.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, Dr. Goldson is answering most of these questions adequately, so I don't ever feel a need to reinforce the same things that she's saying.
Of course.
But I do just want to add one thing to the question that Ms. Muth asked in the chat in particular. I definitely, along with my colleagues and Dr. Goldson, I'm thinking about what this means for families that maybe aren't able to actually stay home with their child all day. What kind of opportunities and options that we're going to be able to provide for them to also participate in this. So thank you.
Yep, absolutely. We're going to go to the next question, Ms. Diana Go from UP. And Dr. Goss, I just have to say, we have everybody everywhere in the county and tuning into this. So it's a great turnout. Thank you for being here. Okay, Diana.
Good evening, everyone. Dr. Goldson, I'm Diana Goff, and I have a son who's a rising 8th grader at Hyattsville Middle. My question is, how will the special education reevaluations be conducted? Is that something that can be done in person, or will that be able to be conducted online, virtually? Because I know that many children have to take a battery of different tests when they go through that process. Thank you.
So right now we're looking at how we will handle not only special education re-evals, but we have a set of students who want to test into kindergarten, who parents and students have exhibited some characteristics to say that their child is excelling and they want them to start early for kindergarten. So we are looking at a way to do that safely and trying to find either electronic platform or a way to have 2 to 3 kids physically come in with an adult to do the assessment. So we will have that answered for you before school begins. So we're working through now and checking on an electronic platform to potentially do it as well. Thanks for that question.
Next, we'll go to Lisa Hargrove. Ms. Hargrove?
Hi, good evening, Dr. Goldson, Delegate Washington. My question is, so I'm a parent of 3 children in Prince George's County. One is, 7th grader, rising 8th grader at MLK Middle School, and the 2 younger ones are at Dora Kennedy French Immersion, and kindergarten and 3rd grade, just completed those. What I found this particular spring, the older ones, the 3rd grader and the 7th grader, they were able to, I would say, more easily pick up the lessons virtually. For the younger one in kindergarten, especially because it's immersion, that was really where my question was, it was difficult. And as a parent who's also on the PTA, and other parents reach out to me, I'm the class mom, so I'm getting a lot of the same feedback that is very challenging. And I imagine it's challenging in an English speaking school, but it's definitely challenging for the immersion programs. And so I was just wondering, has there ever been conversation about repeating for the younger, especially for the younger grades, repeating grades or giving parents the opportunity to let children repeat grades? And also, are there any additional supplements you're providing for immersion programs?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So parents always have the option to have their child repeat a grade. And that's up to you to repeat that grade. I would recommend during this pandemic that might not be an option now. Allow us an opportunity to provide as many resources to get you through this hump as possible before you resort to that as an option. That's just from one parent to the next. In terms of the immersion program and supplement, we just had a conversation recently about making sure that in that independent practice, they have the opportunity to use programs that we will make sure they have access to practice speaking and learning that takes place that's not virtual. For everyone that's on, the best way to describe it would be a teaching tool similar to Rosetta Stone, because everybody can relate to Rosetta Stone, even though that has now been replaced by another program, but everyone remembers Rosetta Stone. So similar to a program that allows you to do that. And we'll have to make some headphone purchases so that, as you shared, you got 3 kids at home to make sure that they have a tool where they can still do it without disturbing the next child next to them. The other thing that came out of the community town hall was this need for specialty programs to have their own parent night for information. And so we are working on having that for specialty programs, special education, and there's CTE. And right now the date is tentatively August 20th, but we're working on that. And we'll also publish that information where it's solely just for those groups to help you to navigate and what supports we need to provide. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. Ms. Gardiner, Shamoyia, we had a question come in for you about the Blueprint for Maryland's Future and the racial equity lens that was placed on this bill, and how how the Blueprint can attract African-American or minority teachers to the teaching profession. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So in the legislation, we included a lot of provisions that would require all entities reporting data to make sure that data about hiring, recruitment, retention practices are also disaggregated by race and made available. Because the bill was vetoed, the measures that would have gone into effect right away are not happening. So things like the Accountability and Implementation Board, which is going to work to ensure that the blueprint is appropriately being implemented, and have the actual metrics that we're going to use to determine whether we're successful in recruiting and retaining racially diverse teachers have not been set yet. So in addition to the override fight, we are also going to be looking at how we can ensure that the state is being held accountable beyond just reporting data. That's a really great question.
Yeah, thank you for the answer, for the great answer. Dr. Goldson, we do have a question that came into the chat from Ms. Atterbury. I'm just going to read it. How will, quote, specials be different in the fall, i.e. PE, art, and music? It's hard to juggle all of the requirements in an online environment, especially for elementary school students. Can these be addressed as enriching offerings and not requirements?
Yeah, in the spring, we just said all electives are on Fridays. That was not the best way to handle it. So we've created a structure that allows specials to be embedded each day throughout the week. So our elementary principals do a great job of building a schedule that allows those specials, which are for parents who are not in the elementary world, art, physical education, music, vocal and instrumental. It's those courses when we talk about special. Sorry, that's my dog who wanted to add in her 15 cents about specials. So we have built that into the schedule. It won't be like on a Friday again. It will be built into the regular weekly schedule.
Yeah. And Dr. Goldson, her other question was, I understand that students will receive grades. Will the current PGCPS weights, quote unquote, of assessments and assignments be altered?
Yeah, it is. It will be altered. Classwork, homework, and assessments will all weigh the same thing. We've already revised the procedure and it's in the guide. And we will be doing letter grades and numerical grades. We won't be doing pass fail.
Can I ask a question on that too, just to follow up on that? How does that compare? For me, I've always asked for consistency amongst the state because that provides some type of equity for all students. And if you go from one county to the next, you'll be on the same par as other students in those other areas. So I wondered how many of the, I know we talked about this already. So how many other jurisdictions are doing what we're doing and the way that we're doing it? And how can we ensure that there's equity amongst the state by doing these procedures?
Now you know better than that, Delegate Washington. What I'm not going to do is throw my colleagues under the bus. But what I will tell you is that Prince George's County Public Schools, thankfully, is on cutting edge of making sure that we provide more equitable experiences for all of our students. I can tell you there are a few other superintendents that I called that we talk through. Making sure that we close the gap for all students. And for us, it reared its ugly head during COVID-19 more than any other time. It's not that it doesn't exist every day now. But honestly, we use a variety of people. Like LAYC was a great tool to help to go into our homes and deliver hotspots. We did multiple distributions. We fed families. You didn't have to, all you had to do was just show up at a site. And we have hired an equity director to ensure that even all of the work that we do every day is creating a platform to ensure that all students have access. I will say, because of the conversations that were had between Maryland State Department of Ed and our elected officials recently, all distance learning plans that have to be submitted by the middle of August must address equity. So across the state now, you will see it evidenced in our plan.
Dr. Goldson, I wonder who asked that question to be addressed.
I think it could have been Delegate Washington.
Yeah, right. That's important. That's important. Thank you for that. We're gonna go to our next question. Miss Maria Walden asked to unmute you, and if you can ask your question.
Yes, thank you so much. I just wanted to ask a question about consistency within the classroom. I have two kids, Adora Kennedy, and we had an amazing experience with one of the teacher, with one of my kids, with the teacher or the tools that she was using, and it was amazing, but with the other student, it wasn't as good. So how can we have that consistency between classrooms? Another thing that I was a little concerned is that having the kids when they use Zoom, that the teacher could mute the students and don't give them the opportunity to talk during the class. if that's something that can be addressed, because we don't want the kids to lose that confidence and to lose that habit of talking and participating in the class. So I know it could be a little hard with managing, but it's the same that in the classroom, you wouldn't have a mute button for your kids in the classroom, and you have to teach protocol of when do you raise your hand and when do you talk. So I think it's just important to keep that in mind, that kids need to participate and to talk. And the last one is about school spirit. Are we doing things to continue having the spirit? Events, we didn't have any like graduation, nothing. And I think it's important for the kids to keep having this and feel good about their achievements and feel good about what they do, not just to get like the certificate at the end, but really have this, continue to having these events that get them excited about going to school, excited about doing the work.
Well, thank you for that question. Let me just say, I have to take my hat off to our teachers, though I know for some people the experience was not the best. It was not like what you would have loved it to have been. But literally, we left school on March 13th thinking we were returning in 2 weeks. And we ain't been back since. And so my hat goes off to educators who didn't know what Zoom was. They thought it was a song back in the day from the Commodore. So they had no clue what it was, and literally were able to get on a platform and at least deliver something. And what we did do is in June, the last week of June, offer professional development again, because now that they've gotten on, they had to take that learning to another level. That is what we're doing from August 20th through the 28th. Is now not starting back at the basics. We're past that now. We are taking it to the next level of providing engaging instruction, so that experience that your child in that one classroom will look close. You know, the experience will be great for all of them. I can tell you, when I started out on Zoom, when we first started this, I didn't know how to do breakout sessions. And now I figured out how to do breakout sessions. I figured out how to put my whole name on the screen instead of just my first name. So you know, you learn the tool as you're using it. So I am a believer in the 10,000 teachers who want to do what's best for children, and they will step up to it. And in terms of encouraging and supporting our students, we all want them to be excited about learning, and will provide opportunities even virtually. I can remember back in the spring, a student received a letter from his teacher, and it's amazing what a traditional mailed letter, the excitement that he received just from getting a mailed letter from his teacher. And so it's those kinds of things that I'm sure we will make recommendations to our teachers of ways that they can encourage their students as well.
Thank you, Dr. Goldson. Can I just speak to accountability for a second? Is there, or will there, before accountability, will there be office hours for students to go back to their teachers to talk to them, right? I talked to a group of students recently, and they asked that question, that they wanted more office hours. They interviewed me, and I asked them a ton of questions, and they mentioned that they wanted more office hours.
Yeah, and they told me that too via email. So we've built in on Wednesdays. We built in on Wednesdays these small groups. So at the secondary level, you follow an A day, B day model. On Wednesday, it'll be all periods, all 8 for a short period of time, for you to just go in and get assistance, to ask your questions about what the work is that you receive for that class that you need help with before you have to turn it in before that class meets again. We're doing the same thing at the elementary level. Wednesday will be used for small group instruction, for the teacher to say, hey, Monica, I'm going to need you to come back on Wednesday because I noticed that you're having difficulty with division. And then I'm going to do a special session for you. So yes, we built that in on Wednesdays.
No, my accountability question is more so for parents, right? So this is new for all of us. We're going to get your 160 page, that's the dwindling down process report. Is that report the standard operating procedures and showing like what, so that parents can go and say, okay, I know what to expect from the teachers and what should happen in a classroom in order to hold the school system accountable for teaching my child?
Yeah, definitely. We're calling it, it's the guide. Now, honestly, if I were a parent, I would pick up that 160 page document and say, are you freaking kidding me? So we are creating a Cliff Note version to that document. That's a shorter version of it. But if you want the full details, it does have a table of contents. Like, so if you're wondering how we're supposed to handle attendance, you can go to the table of contents and look it up. you're wondering how we're handling 504s, you can go to the section, look it up. But yeah, it's comprehensive, and then we'll have a Cliff Note version.
And teacher review process to ensure teachers there's still a process for which teachers are being reevaluated and looked at.
Excellent question.
Yeah.
In the spring, Maryland State Department of Education waived evaluations. I'm expecting that they will not for this year, and teachers, and I shared this on the professional town hall that was held last Thursday with staff, that they can expect to be for observations to take place virtually and to be evaluated this year.
Got it. Okay. We're going to take a couple more questions, and I think we are close to being done. So thank you, Dr. Goldson, Mr. Thomas, and Miss Gardiner for your time. So we're going to ask Miss Karen, or Karan, I think it's Karen Johnson, if you can ask your question, please.
How you doing? My name is actually Karan.
Okay, there you go. Sorry.
Thank you guys for presenting with this opportunity. My name is Karan Johnson. I work at Gwen Park High School. And my question is around administrative procedures for teachers and code of conduct for students in regards to virtual decorum. So during the spring, I strayed away from doing live sessions just because there wasn't enough information regarding procedures and rules and regulations for both teachers and students. So I want to know if there's going to be any information that has been either updated or shared with staff and students regarding virtual decorum.
Yep. So all the administrative procedures that are needed for our distance learning have been updated, and they're linked in the guide. So you'll have access to them, which is fast coming. I keep talking about this guide. That's because I'm in the process of editing it right now, but you will have access to those procedures and have enough time to review.
Okay. Great. We have one more question from a Galaxy Note 10 Plus. I'm not sure if that's if that's a computer or if they're going to actually speak to us.
Hi, no, I'll talk. This is Iron. I left the meeting, had to come back on, and I'm not sure if you hit this topic, Dr. Goldson, about speech therapy. Both my boys on the spectrum. I'm just curious, will speech therapy be continued?
Yep, it will be. Those are considered supplemental services, and it'll be continued and be done virtually. So yes.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Goldson, here's the last question for you. So if the lessons are taped, do parents have to consent to their child being recorded?
So there's a way for you to tape in. So let me answer that. Yes, if children are seeing, but there is a way for you to tape the screen and the voiceover from that screen and not necessarily students. So like you could tape you could see this, or the presentation that Ms. Gardiner did, you could see the screen and her voice when you tape over. So there are two ways to do it. And when Ms. Gardiner did her presentation, you could not see all 89 participants. What you saw was the screen and her voice and like you and one other person.
Got it. Okay. Well, I want to just thank you, Dr. Goldson, for being our star in the county and for really holding us in this situation that we're in right now. You're doing a fantastic job on behalf of the Maryland General Assembly and my community in District 22 in the state and Prince George's County. I want to thank you. Are there any closing remarks you want to add? And then I'm going to ask Mr. Thompson and also Ms. Gardiner if they want to say anything to close out.
I just want to say thank you all for tuning in during your dinner time and appreciate the questions. It allows us to make sure that we have covered everything. And if we have forgotten something, we will make sure it gets resolved before school opens. So thank you.
Yep. Mr. Thomas?
Yeah, thanks so much again, Delegate Washington, for making this space. Thank you, Dr. Goldson, for not only having all of the answers to these important questions, but for all the work that you've done to lead us to this point. I just want to reinforce for folks that when this all happened in March, all of our actions were reactions. They were all reactive choices to how we dealt with the situation. And while we are still reacting now, we have an opportunity to be proactive. I'm so grateful that Dr. Goldson and her team decided to make this decision at the beginning or the middle of July, because it gives us a lot of time to get things right and to do things a lot better this time around. So I have a lot of optimism and hope as we move forward. So thank you all.
Ms. Gardiner, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thanks very much for having me, and just keeping an eye on the comments has really filled me in a way that I didn't expect. So I'm appreciative for everyone who's participated as well.
Absolutely. We want to thank, also want to just thank the school board members, Pamela Boozer-Strother and Belinda Queen for being on the call, and Edward Barrows. And also have to thank my staff, Sam Jackson for doing a fantastic job getting this together, and Jordan Williams, who's our new intern this summer. And thank you all. And please, we're taking notes of all the questions that you put in there. So we're going to send any ones that Dr. Goldson was not able to answer to her. And I'm sure she'll give us some answers when she has time to. Again, thank you all. And we will have one of these again at some point. I don't know when, but maybe sometime soon. So thank you, everyone. And look forward to working with everybody during this time. And please be safe, wear a mask, and stay socially distant. Thank you. Have a great day.